What if Cleopatra didn't kill herself over love, or even despair? What if her death was a masterstroke of political warfare, a final act of resistance designed to shake the Roman Empire? For over 2,000 years, her suicide has been blamed on heartbreak. But history, as always, is written by the victors. And those victors had every reason to bury the truth about the last queen of Egypt. Cleopatra VII, the woman, the queen, the enigma, born into the ruthless Ptolemaic dynasty, where sibling murdered sibling for power. She survived palace intrigues, exile, and assassination attempts, and by the age of 18, ruled one of the richest kingdoms on earth. Not by seduction, by strategy. And she did it in a world that feared powerful women more than any army. Her dynasty, the Ptolemies, was Greek, not Egyptian, and had ruled Egypt for nearly 300 years. But Cleopatra was different. Unlike her ancestors, she learned to speak Egyptian. She adopted local customs. She didn't just rule Egypt, she embodied it. The people saw her not as a foreigner, but as a goddess queen. To Rome, that was terrifying. To her people, it was loyalty made flesh. When Cleopatra's father died, she inherited a fractured throne. Her brother-husband, Ptolemy XIII, turned against her. She fled Alexandria, but didn't go quietly. Instead, she staged one of history's most theatrical returns. Smuggled into the palace, rolled in a carpet, emerging before Julius Caesar like a living legend. It wasn't seduction, it was spectacle. And Caesar, always one for drama, was captivated. With Caesar's backing, Cleopatra crushed her enemies. Her brother drowned fleeing battle. She installed another younger brother as co-ruler, but held the true reins of power. She bore Caesar a son, Caesarion, and for a moment seemed untouchable. She even visited Rome. But her presence there, her wealth, her power, her foreign gods, shook the foundations of the Republic. And when Caesar fell to knives, so too did her Roman dream. Cleopatra returned to Egypt, now a widow in the eyes of Rome, and plotted her next move. Her son, Caesarion, was her trump card, but he was also a target. As Rome descended into civil war, Cleopatra waited, watching from across the sea. When Mark Antony, Caesar's former ally, emerged as a dominant force in the east, Cleopatra made her next gamble. And once again, she played to win. Their meeting was legendary. Cleopatra arrived in Tarsus by boat, dressed as the goddess Isis, surrounded by incense and music. Antony was stunned. She hadn't come to beg, she came to dazzle. And it worked. He followed her back to Alexandria, and soon the two were inseparable, lovers, partners, rulers. But this was no fairy tale. It was a chess match, and Rome was the board. Together, they formed a new Eastern power. Cleopatra gave Antony money, ships, and soldiers. He gave her legitimacy. Their children were given royal titles, and Cleopatra was crowned Queen of Kings. This wasn't romance, it was a challenge to Rome's dominance. And it worked, for a while. But back in Rome, a young upstart named Octavian was watching, and he wasn't impressed. Octavian, Caesar's heir, had power, but not yet the crown. To claim it, he needed to destroy Antony. But killing a Roman hero wasn't enough. He needed a villain. Enter Cleopatra. Octavian portrayed her as a foreign temptress corrupting a noble Roman. He spread salacious rumors that she used witchcraft, that she bewitched Antony, that she planned to make Caesarion king of Rome. The Senate, outraged, declared war, not on Antony, but on Cleopatra. This was unprecedented. Rome wasn't just attacking a general, it was invading a queen's domain. Cleopatra didn't cower. She readied her fleets, her armies. At Actium, her fate hung in the balance. But the battle was a disaster. Miscommunication, betrayal, and Antony's misjudgment led to a crushing defeat. They fled to Egypt. The war was lost, but the game wasn't over. But Octavian couldn't erase her legend. Artists kept painting her. Writers kept retelling her tale. The tragedy of the foreign queen who died for love. That story sells. It lasts. But the truth, that she was a ruler who made her own final choice to deny her enemies satisfaction, that was far more complicated. So, they buried it, just like they buried her tomb. Her final resting place remains unknown. Some believe it's beneath the waves of Alexandria. Others think it lies near Taposiris Magna. Archaeologists still search. But maybe that's the point. Cleopatra's body is missing. But her myth? That lives on. Every generation reimagines her. Is she a goddess, a temptress, a strategist? The answer is all of those, and none. Even Shakespeare missed the mark. His Cleopatra weeps and wails. But the real Cleopatra? She was sharp, clever, politically astute. She raised armies, held kingdoms together, influenced giants, Caesar and Antony, and walked with them into legend. Her final act wasn't surrender. It was strategy. A bold conclusion to a life lived in the heart of empire and upheaval. Now think about this. If Cleopatra had survived, if Caesarion had ruled, history might have changed course entirely. No Augustus, no Roman Empire as we know it. The world map, religions, power structures, all might be different today. Her death didn't just end a dynasty. It shifted the future of civilization. So when you hear the story of Cleopatra and the snake, pause. Ask yourself, whose story is it? The Romans had every reason to control her narrative, but maybe her silence was her final message, a choice made with strength, not sorrow. She didn't fade away. She refused to let others define her end. Before she was a queen, Cleopatra was a survivor. Raised in a palace where ambition and betrayal walked hand in hand, she learned young that silence could be power. Her siblings schemed, courtiers whispered, but she paid attention. And when the time came, she didn't wait for a crown. She claimed it. She didn't just attract powerful men. She outsmarted them. Cleopatra understood Rome's ambitions, so she gave them what they expected: beauty, drama, elegance, but only to gain influence. Behind every performance was a plan. While others played games of chance, she played a game of strategy. She was never just a queen. She was a tactician, a symbol, a force. Her court was not just a place of indulgence. It was a theater of power. Musicians, philosophers, priests, and spies all played roles in her performance. Every visitor left Alexandria either enchanted, indebted, or disoriented. Even her enemies could not stop speaking her name. She was mythic, alive, and that myth frightened Rome more than any army on horseback. Her image was sculpted carefully. In public, she was Isis reborn, divine, untouchable. In private, she was strategic and sharp. She knew the price of mercy, the danger of delay. Executions came swiftly, alliances even faster. She did not have the luxury of hesitation. Every moment was war, quiet, bloody, and constant. And then came Caesar. Not just a man, an institution. Their alliance was not born in a bed, but in a war room. He needed Egypt's wealth. She needed his military. Together, they weren't just lovers. They were empire builders. And when she bore him a son, Cleopatra believed her dynasty had found its anchor. But anchors can sink as fast as they stabilize. Rome never accepted Caesarion, not fully. A half-blood child, born of a foreign queen, whispered to be divine. Octavian saw him not as a child, but as a threat, a rival to his inheritance. Cleopatra knew this. Every lullaby she sang, Caesarion carried the silent echo of war drums. Her son's life was always one assassination away from extinction. Even in times of peace, her life was guarded. Cleopatra wore daggers beneath her gowns, gave orders in code, and fed her inner circle with fear and gold. Every servant was a potential spy. Every gift a potential trap. She lived in luxury, yes, but it was the luxury of a snake pit, warm and deadly. The libraries of Alexandria, her pride, burned under Roman assault. Not just buildings, knowledge. Papyrus filled with astronomy, anatomy, history, all reduced to ash. Cleopatra mourned the loss not just of books, but of identity. Rome didn't just want Egypt's land. They wanted its soul, and she refused to hand it over without a fight. She trained her daughters to be queens, her son to be a god. But there was one lesson none of them could learn fast enough: how to survive a world ruled by men who feared intelligent women. Cleopatra was more than they could kill, and so they tried to erase her instead. After her death, Rome flooded Egypt with statues of Augustus. Temples once carved in her name were renamed. In the markets, citizens were forced to chant new praises. The Queen of Kings became a footnote, but memory, real memory, lingered in the people. In stories whispered by old priests, in graffiti scratched beneath crumbling walls, she lived, she ruled, she burned. The Roman poets told tales of her perfume wafting through the sails of her ship. But they didn't write about the poison she kept tucked in her rings, or the guards she paid double to keep their silence. Cleopatra knew that beauty opened doors, but secrets kept her alive. And in Alexandria, secrets were currency more valuable than gold. Her ships were swift, her harbors deep. She had engineers who could flood entire causeways and architects who built hidden tunnels beneath the palace. If Rome came, she wouldn't just fight, she would vanish, retreat into the walls like smoke. She had escape plans layered within escape plans. But what she didn't account for was betrayal from within. When Antony began losing battles, Cleopatra sensed the shift in him. He drank more, raged more. The man who had once commanded empires was now ruled by regret. She loved him, perhaps, but she didn't trust him, not entirely, because she knew what happened to men who lost Rome. They begged, they betrayed, or they bled. In her final days, Cleopatra became colder, more resolute. Visitors noticed her silences, her measured tones. She dismissed entertainers and summoned scholars. She didn't weep. She planned. And when she received word that Octavian had reached the gates of Alexandria, she didn't panic. She ordered her tomb to be sealed, not in grief, but in control. If Rome wanted her, they'd have to dig her out. Some say she kept Caesarion hidden in the desert, guarded by Nubian mercenaries. Others believe she disguised him as a servant and sent him east under a false name. Whatever the truth, she knew one thing. If she lived, Octavian would find him. But if she died, dramatically, mysteriously, maybe he had a chance. Her death wasn't an ending. It was a message. The message was this: I am not yours to parade. I am not yours to rewrite. If you want my story, you will have to chase it. And for 2,000 years, we have. From tomb raiders to scholars, Cleopatra has haunted history like a ghost that refuses to lie still. Even her enemies became obsessed with her. Octavian kept her image on coins, defaced, yes, but there. Tacitus wrote of her, Suetonius. Even Plutarch, who doubted her virtue, admitted her voice could enchant. They couldn't forget her, no matter how hard they tried. She had lived too loud, too brilliantly to disappear. And maybe that was her final act of rebellion. In a world that reduced powerful women to silence or scandal, Cleopatra left behind an echo so thunderous, even her conquerors couldn't drown it out. They turned her into a villain, into a myth. But what they feared most was the truth. She was real. We picture Cleopatra as lying on silk, a golden snake on her arm. But maybe she died standing up. Maybe she looked into the eyes of the soldier sent to end her and said, "Do it." Maybe she smiled as he hesitated, unsure whether he was killing a woman or ending a dynasty. That moment, that pause, was her victory. Even now, Egypt bears her shadow. Women in markets still carry her name. Her profile lives in amulets and street art. She may not have temples, but she has memory. And memory is the most dangerous monument of all.